Hello students, in this video lesson we're going to be discussing Introduction to Statistics with Mean and Weighted Mean. Statistics is a branch of mathematics that uses math to analyze information. Anywhere there is numerical data, one can use statistics to analyze it. Business, science, sports, politics, and even one's own personal budget. We all should have a budget, so let's focus on that. The first step is to collect the data. In this case, what are we spending? Below are some fictitious data of spending for 5 different households, 2 parents with 2 children, for monthly rent or mortgage. So we have 5 different households and 5 different values that they pay for either their rent or for their mortgage. When we're going to find the mean or the average of how much is being spent for rent or mortgage, we're going to add the numbers up and then divide by ever how many numbers we had. We have a total of 5 numbers, so we're going to add those 5 numbers: 850, 500, 650, 500 again, and 700. And then we're going to divide that sum by how many numbers we had. Well, we had 5 different values. So we're going to divide that sum by 5. And that will give us the value of the mean. Now the mean represents, in this case, how much was spent for a monthly for either rent or mortgage. So when we're answering our question, we have to specify what that mean represents. For this data, the average monthly amount spent for rent or mortgage is $640. Okay, now I'd like you to stop the video and, by using the formula above and the data below, determine the mean or average monthly amount spent for food for the 5 different households. So how'd you do? The process should be simply to add the 5 numbers, and since there were 5 different numbers that you added, you're going to divide your sum by that value, and in this case is 500, and then you're going to answer the question, which was how much average was spent for food, and the average monthly amount spent for food is $500. Now, often with data, there's so much data, a frequency table is created to keep track of the amounts that are repeated and to make the data more manageable. Above, we only had data for 5 households, but what if we had data for 500 households? We would want to categorize the amounts, possibly by rounding the amounts to a certain place value. So below is fictitious monthly rent or mortgage rounded to the nearest hundred for 500 households. My first column represents the amount being paid for their rent or mortgage. My second column is the frequency. How many households have to pay that amount? 81 households have to pay $400 for their rent or mortgage. 48 households pay $500 for their rent or mortgage. 132 households pay $600 for their rent or mortgage. 115 households pay $700, and 124 households pay $800 for their rent or mortgage. So for this type of listing of data, we're going to look for the weighted mean. We're not going to add 500 different values together, but instead we're going to multiply each amount by how often it occurred. Remember, multiplication really just is repeated addition. 5 plus 5 plus 5 is the same thing as 3 times 5. So we're going to take the first column and multiply it to the second column to get a value for how much was paid for the 81 households, and so forth for each one. So the 400 times the 81 gives me 32,400. The 500 times the 48 gives me 24,000. The 600 times 132 gives me 79,200. The 700 times 115 equals 80,500. And 800 times 124 gives me 99,200. You can just plug these into your calculator to get those amounts. Now we have to add the columns. Well, we already know that their frequency should add up to 500, since we were told earlier that there was a total of 500 households. But you can always add those to confirm that. Now my last column, I have to add that so I can determine how much money overall was spent for mortgage or rent for the 500 households. Now that I have my values, I can plug those values into my formula. The sum of the weighted scores is on top, and the number of actual households is on the bottom. And then we're going to round that value to the nearest cent, which gives us 630 and 60 cents. And then I want to state my answer clearly. For the data above, the average monthly amount spent for rent or mortgage is $630.60. If you have access to the electronic guided notes for this lesson, check out the two sites below to view some real statistics concerning household expenses. Determining one's GPA is also determining a weighted mean. Each letter has a different value. A's have a 4-point value. B's have a 3-point value. C's have a 2-point value. D's have a 1-point value. And F's have 0 value. So the number of credits is the item that you have. You're going to total that column up, just like we totaled how many households. But we have to find out, for every credit, we have to multiply that by the point value of the letter. So if you got an A in your math class, you would multiply the 3 times the 4 to get 12 points total for the math class. For history, if you got a C, you would have to multiply the 3 times the 2 to get 6, the total points for history. Now, biology is a 5-credit-hour class, and you get a B in that, let's say, so 5 times 3 is going to give us 15 points. And then English is a 3-credit-hour class, and hey, it looks like this person got an A. So 3 times 4 is going to get that person or this situation a 12. Now we have to total our columns. We already, if we total our number of credits for the semester, that's 14 credits. And on the far right, we're going to total our point values, which is going to be 45 point values for the semester. And then to figure the GPA, we're going to plug that into our formula. Total point value divided by total credits. And then we're going to round that to the nearest hundredths. So for this particular situation, it would be 3.21 GPA. Okay, now I'd like for you to stop your video and figure out the GPA for someone who had this particular situation for their semester. Okay, so how did you do? The first thing you'd have to do is designate the values for each letter, the A, B, C, and D. And then you'd have to multiply those values by the number of credits. So that should have given you 12, 9, 10, and 6. Then add up how many credits that person had for that semester and divide it. Well, let's see, the point value goes on top. Point values divided by how many credits they had for that semester. And your answer should have been 2.64 if you rounded it to the nearest hundredths. Well, we are now to the end of our lesson. and I have 3 questions for you to complete for your discussion board problem.